Each year, Microsoft Research hosts hundreds of influential speakers from around the world, including leading scientists, renowned experts in technology, book authors, and leading academics, and makes videos of these lectures freely available.
Salut, je voudrais présenter Louis, mon nom. Il est un homme.
And that's all the French you know.
Il est l'homme. And his greatest accomplishment in life is teaching me French.
And that's about it.
Today he's going to tell you how you can also learn French.
Hi, I guess I'll tell you about learning French. Okay, since this is a smaller audience, I thought you should ask me a lot of questions, basically. I'm just going to breeze through the very first part, because I think the majority of you probably already know it. And then I'm going to talk in detail about Duolingo, but most of it, I expect you to ask me a lot of questions. Okay? Good? Yeah. Okay.
What's your title?
Title. Yeah, Nicole forced me to have a title. Okay, so I've been working on this thing called human computation, but now called crowdsourcing, I guess, for like 12 years. The first project that I worked on was this project called the ESP Game. In case you didn't see it, it was a game. It was played in total by about 10 million people, and it was super fun. But the twist of this game is that as people were playing the game, they were also helping us to label images to improve Google image search. That was the idea. The ESP Game eventually got bought by Google. And oh, by the way, the way this game works is it's a two-player online game. So whenever you go to the website, you get randomly paired with somebody else wanting to play the game. That's your partner. It's just a complete stranger from the web. And the goal of the game is for both you and your partner to type the exact same word, given that the only thing you two have in common is that you can see the same image. Okay, so you can both see the same image. You know you can both see the same image, and now you're told type whatever the other guy's typing. Turns out that what people did was type a lot of words related to the common image. Okay, so player one was typing a bunch of words related to the image. Player two was doing that. And then at some point, one of player one's words was equal to one of player two's words. They agreed, they get points, and then they get a brand new image. That was the basic idea of the game. Oh, and by the way, this word that the two players agreed on was usually a very good label for the image because it came from two relatively independent sources. Okay, that was the basic idea. Yes?
Did you get a lot of people just putting in just constant garbage?
Yes, they tried. We realized that they were going to try that, so that wasn't a problem because there were a lot of mechanisms to prevent that. For example, well, A was one of the most common things that people did, but another one is whenever a word got associated to the image, it became what's called a taboo word. So the next time the image got shown, that word couldn't be used anymore. And so there were a few mechanisms like that, and in the end, that wasn't a problem, although we worried a lot about that problem. Okay, any other questions about that? Okay, so I worked on this. This was pretty successful. The next project that I worked on was a project called reCAPTCHA, or the next project that I worked on that actually worked. I worked on many other projects that didn't work. Was a project called reCAPTCHA, and in case you haven't seen it, the idea, everybody has seen these distorted characters that you have to type all over the internet. The reason that's there is to make sure that you, the entity filling out the form, are actually a human, and not a computer program that was written to submit the form millions of times. And the reason it works is because humans can read these, or at least some of the time, but computer programs can't do it as well yet. Okay, so for example, in the case of Ticketmaster, the reason you have to type these is to prevent scalpers from writing a program to buy millions of tickets two at a time. Okay, now these are used all over the place, and in fact, I did a little back of the envelope calculation about how often people type. This thing is called a CAPTCHA, by the way. How often people type these, and when I did that calculation, it was about 2005, 2006, and the calculation, the number I came up with was about 200 million times a day. That was just the calculation. It turns out I was pretty close to right. It's about 200 million times a day. People type one of these every day. Now, when I first heard this number, I was quite proud of myself. I was one of the people who helped invent these, so I was quite proud of myself. I thought, look at the impact that my research has had. But then I started feeling bad because the thing is, not only is it annoying to type these things, but each time you type one of them, you waste about 10 seconds of your time. And if you multiply that by 200 million, you get that humanity as a whole is wasting like 500,000 hours every day typing these. So then I started thinking, is there any way in which we can use this effort for something that's useful? And the answer to that was yes, and this is what we did. This is the project called reCAPTCHA, where the idea with reCAPTCHA was, nowadays, while you type one of them, not only are you authenticating yourself as a human, but you're helping us to digitize books. And the way it works is the following. There's a lot of projects out there trying to digitize books. So Google has one, the Internet Archive has one. And basically, these projects work is you start with a book, like a physical thing, and then you scan it. Now, scanning a book is like taking a digital photograph of every page of the book. It gives you an image for every page of the book. The next step in the process is that the computer needs to be able to decipher all of these words so that you can search through the book. That's done using a technology called OCR, for optical character recognition. The problem with OCR is that it's not perfect, especially for older books where the ink has faded. The computer cannot recognize a lot of the words. So what we're doing now is we're taking all of the words that the computer cannot recognize, and we're getting people to read them for us while they type a CAPTCHA on the internet. Okay, so these words that people are typing are actually words that are coming directly from books that the computer could not recognize. And the reason there are two now, instead of just one, is because, see, for one of them, is one that we already know the answer for, and it's the one that we use to figure out whether you're a human. And the other one is a brand new word that we just got out of a book that the system doesn't know the answer for. And then we're not going to tell people which one's which, and we're going to say, please type both. And if you type the correct answer for the one for which we already knew the answer, we assume you're human, and we also get some confidence that you typed the other word correctly. And if we repeat this process multiple times, then, with a brand new word and all of them agree on what that new word is, then that word becomes digitized correctly. Yes?
Doesn't this double the amount of time?
Yeah, that's a very good question. It actually doesn't, for a very good reason. That's a very good question. It turns out, the question is this. Doesn't this double the amount of time? You started by saying, humanity's wasting all this time. Doesn't this double the amount of time? Yeah.
The ratio of useful time to spend is now not infinity, right?
Yeah, the ratio. That's good. You think about the ratio, but it's not just that. It's actually not quite true that we know the answer for one of them and don't know the answer for the other one. That's not true. In reality, we're just way more confident by one than the other one. So we actually are getting good signal from both. We're just one. We're getting a lot more. So that's one thing. We're getting good signal from both. And second, since we're now using words as opposed to random characters, it turns out that the actual amount of time is not increased. Yes?
Did you add those lines?
Yes.
So if the computer couldn't read it, why did you need to add the line?
Because we don't know the computer couldn't read it. All we know is, what we get is, OCR ran through the book. Then we get some words. What we get is a confidence score. How confident is it that it read that word or not? For some of the words, it may be really low confidence, but it actually got it right. So we just don't know. The confidence score is not perfect. We don't know. We also don't know that our OCR is the best OCR in the world. We just know that our OCR could not figure it out. So we're going to give it out, and then we're going to distort it even further to make sure that nobody else can figure it out. That's it. Yes?
So I guess if I wanted to hire people to do this for me, are there people doing this for a living?
Oh yeah, there are people doing this for a living. As in, you're saying spammers. Yeah. Why can't spammers? Yeah, spammers.
How much do you pay per thing, do you know?
Oh yeah, it's about $5 per 1,000 is the going rate. You can get slightly cheaper, but they're crappier workers. But it's about $5 per 1,000 is the going rate. And this is the number one way in which CAPTCHAs are broken, is by getting people in Bangladesh or wherever to be doing it like that. And there's nothing you can do. There's not much you can do. I've thought about the problem of how to solve this. We thought about all kinds of things, but some of them are funny. But there's nothing you can really do to stop this, right?
Do you think you could train a monkey to do?
Yeah, that would be good.
Are you happy with the amount of questions, or?
I'm happy with the amount of questions. Good. Okay. Any other question? Yes.
It seems like the reCAPTCHAs I run into on the internet have been getting harder over the years. Is that because they have a more successful machine enemies to outwit, or is that because I'm getting the words that nobody could decipher before?
That's because you're becoming less and less human. No, I'm just kidding. No, it's really because machines are getting better and better, so we have to add more and more distortion. That's the underlying reason. There's all kinds of other reasons. I was just talking to Adam about that. It turns out also that, so this project was actually acquired by Google to digitize their books. I was working on it. Then I left Google, and it turns out that the guy that is now in charge doesn't feel as strongly as me about keeping CAPTCHAs easy, so they're harder. That's one. It's just as simple as the one guy on Earth that's making them harder. But okay. Now, since we're doing, so by the way, nowadays we're doing about no.
What's his email?
I'll send it to you. So we're doing about 125 million words a day, or Google now is doing about 125 million words a day with this. It's helping to digitize about 125 million words a day with this, which is the equivalent of about 2.5 million books a year, all being done one word at a time by just having people type CAPTCHAs on the internet. Okay, now, of course, since we're doing so many words, funny things can happen. And this is especially true because, see, now we're giving people two randomly chosen English words right next to each other. So funny things can happen. So, for example, we showed this, which is just the word Christians. There's nothing wrong with it. But if you put it along with another randomly chosen word, bad things can happen. So we showed this. It's kind of bad. But it's even worse because, so reCAPTCHA is used in millions of websites. But the particular one that actually, where we show this, it actually happened to be called the embassy of the kingdom of God. Whoops. Here's another really bad one. JohnEdwards.com. That one, they stopped using us. Actually, I haven't put it in, but somebody sent me a screenshot pretty recently. It was on the Mitt Romney one, and it said funny underwear, which was, I think, I thought it was funny. But it's not just funny things, it's also interesting things. And this has actually given rise to a pretty big internet meme that over the last couple of years. It's just something called CAPTCHA art. If you haven't seen it, let me explain it. This, by the way, there are tens of thousands of examples of CAPTCHA art. Here's how it works. If you're surfing the internet and suddenly you get a CAPTCHA that you think is interesting, like this one, okay, what you're supposed to do is you're supposed to first take a screenshot of it. Then you're supposed to type it because you help us digitize books, so you type it. And then after that, you're supposed to draw something that is related to this. Okay, so like this. Okay, that's an example of CAPTCHA art. And there are tens of thousands of these. So some of them are cuter, like this one. Some of them are funnier, like this one. And some other ones, like paleontological schwizzle, they contain Snoop Dogg. Right there. Okay, but it doesn't stop there. So that's tens of thousands of CAPTCHA arts, but it doesn't stop there. Some other CAPTCHAs, like this one, Inglip summoned. If you've seen this, yeah, you've seen this. Okay, so some CAPTCHAs, this is like the weirdest thing in the world. Some CAPTCHAs actually create a whole religion. So this CAPTCHA was shown, and then somebody decided that they're going to start the Church of Inglip. So that's the CAPTCHA. Now, the idea of the Church of Inglip is they follow the Lord called Inglip. The followers, also the name of the followers comes from a CAPTCHA. It was supposedly the CAPTCHA that came after this one for whoever was doing this. The followers are called Gropagas, so that's what the CAPTCHA, so that's the followers. And the idea of the whole religion is that Lord Inglip communicates with his followers through reCAPTCHAs. Okay, it gives them instructions through reCAPTCHAs. That's the whole idea. So when we found this out, of course, we started kind of messing with them because we thought it was funny. So we started putting CAPTCHAs like this one. Or this other one. It was funny. Now the crazy thing about this is, at least just in Reddit, for example, there's about 10,000 people who claim to be followers of this religion. So there's about 10,000 people. Now I feel good about that because that's more than the number of people that followed Harold Camping. If you don't know who Harold Camping is, that's the guy who predicted that the world would end last summer. That was all over the news. This guy had less than 10,000 followers, so I feel good about that. And of course, here's another piece of CAPTCHA art that we got for this guy. Okay, so this is my favorite number of, now I'm going to get into Duolingo, and it starts from this number. So this is my favorite number of the reCAPTCHA project. This is 950 million. This is the total number of distinct people that have helped us digitize at least one word out of a book through reCAPTCHA. So it's over 10% of the world's population has helped us digitize books through reCAPTCHA. And it is numbers like these that basically motivate my work. So this is what I'm trying to do. And in fact, the question that motivates my work is the following. If you look at the really big, large-scale projects that humanity has done, the really huge mega projects like the pyramids of Egypt, or the Panama Canal, or putting a man on the moon, there's a curious fact about them, and it is that all of them were done with around the same number of people, same order of magnitude at least. It's about 100,000. All of them were done with about 100,000 people. And the reason for that is because before the internet, coordinating more than 100,000 people was impossible. But see, now with the internet, I've just shown you a project where we've gotten 950 million people working together. So the question is, if we can put a man on the moon with 100,000, what can we do with 100 million? Okay, so that's what I'm trying to figure out. And based on this, I've worked on a bunch of projects, most of which have not worked out. But I will tell you one that is working out and that I'm very excited about, and it's Duolingo, which started with the following question that I posed. Question, yes?
You're comparing the number of people.
Yes?
Should you be comparing the number of people hours?
Yeah, sure. You can compare, and even in number of people hours, reCAPTCHA is killing all of those. Yeah. So that's. I don't know it off the top of my head, but we did that comparison at some point. But I don't know that number off the top of my head. Okay. So the Duolingo started from the following question that I posed to my graduate student, Severin. His last name is Hacker, Severin Hacker. So it was this question.
He changed it in 8th grade.
No, his name is Hacker, but he comes from like this type of hacker. But anyways, this is the question that we started thinking about. How do we get 100 million people translating the web into every major language for free? Okay, so there's a lot of things to say about this question. First of all, translating the web. So right now the web is, well, it's mostly written in English. More than 50% of it is in English. And those who don't know English can't understand it. And of course there's also parts in Spanish and Portuguese, whatever. There's different languages. And if you don't know those languages, you can't understand. So I would like to translate all of the web into every major language. I want to do that. Okay. Now, when we started thinking about this, we thought, well, can't we use computers to do so? Google has Google Translate. It's getting better. Can't we use computers? It turns out it's just not yet good enough. For example, you would not see a book being translated by Google Translate and be sold. It's just not good enough for that. And in fact, let me just show you, when we started working on this, we kind of started looking for places where Google's Translate wasn't doing so well. And actually, we stumbled onto this post. It was a post in a forum about asking questions about Java, which was translated with Google Translate. And let me show you how bad it can get. So I'm going to show you. It's a translation from Japanese into English. Okay? And it starts by just saying, sorry, this is a computer translation. Now remember, this is supposed to be a question about Java. Okay? So I'll read you the rest of the post. So this is the preamble of the question. Okay. Next is the first part of the question. Next is my favorite part of the question. And next is my favorite part of the whole post. Okay, so computer translation, not yet good enough, so we need people. Okay. Now, of course, if we want to translate the whole web, we can't do it with 100 people or 1,000 people.
If it's not exactly a great translation of the Japanese original?
What? No, we did check. We did check. Yeah, actually, it could be that the Japanese guy was just crazy. No. So of course we need people. Okay, so we need people, but it can't be done with 50 people or 1,000 people or a small number of people. If we want to translate the whole web, we literally need millions of people. Okay, so how can we get millions of people doing it? But also, if we're going to get millions of people doing it, I can't pay them, so that's going to be expensive. So how can we get 100 million people translating the web into every major language for free? That's how we started Duolingo. Okay, now when we started thinking about it, there were two pretty large obstacles that we ran into. The first one was a lack of bilinguals. It's only a small fraction of the world's population that is bilingual. I don't know how many of them are bilingual and also use the web, that are bilingual enough to help us translate, but that number is not very different from 100 million, so that's going to be hard to get them all. That's a problem. The second problem is a lack of motivation. How are we going to motivate people to do this for free? Now, we were stuck on these for a while until we actually realized there's a way to solve both of these problems with the same solution. There's a way to kill two birds with one stone. And it is by transforming language translation into something that millions of people want to do, and that also helps with the problem of lack of bilinguals, and that is language education. Okay, so it turns out that today, there are about 1.2 billion people around the world wanting to learn a foreign language. People really, really want to learn a foreign language. And it's not just because they're being forced to do so in school. For example, in the US alone, there's over 5 million people who paid over $500 for software to learn a foreign language. So, yes?
Show me that animation again, how those words.
Oh, yeah. It's really good. Check it out. Keynote, by the way. Hold on.
It's like the...
Yeah, you see that? Okay. Thank you. Thank you. That required effort. Okay, so there's a lot of people learning a language. Okay, so the idea of Duolingo is the following. A huge amount of language translation is needed. That's point one. Point two, there's over 1 billion people wanting to learn a foreign language, and in fact, actually learning a foreign language. And in fact, many of them, while they're learning a language, are also doing translation. That's one of the drills that you do when you're learning a language. So the idea of Duolingo is, why can't we get these people who are learning a language to do a translation for us? That's the idea of Duolingo. Okay, and now, so that's what we've been working on. What Duolingo is a language learning website, a free language learning website. You can go there and learn a language completely for free. But the twist is that while you learn, you're also helping us to translate the web. Okay, so you're learning by doing. That's the whole idea. Let me play you this 1.5-minute video that explains the concept a lot better than I can, and you can just see it.
It's a big world out there. Billions of us trying to live, love, prosper, and make sense of our brief time on this planet. Since the dawn of humanity, we've been passing information from one person to another through a common language. Unfortunately, you can't communicate with others without knowing or learning their language first. A similar issue is manifested on the web, where text can be penned in dozens of languages, each of which demands a reader's fluency. We've developed an elegant solution to both problems, a way for you to learn a language for free, while at the same time helping to translate text from the web, enabling a wealth of language-shackled information to be liberated for all of humanity. It's called Duolingo. Here's how it works. Let's say you're a native English speaker who wants to learn Spanish. We start by giving you a sentence from a Spanish website and asking you to translate it. Wait, back up. How can you translate a language you don't know? First, Duolingo only gives you sentences that fit your language level. Beginners get the really simple sentences from the web, and advanced users get the more complex ones. This way, everybody becomes a valuable translator. And second, if you're really lost, you can always see possible translations for words you don't know. Afterwards, Duolingo helps you understand and memorize the words you hovered over through educational examples. You can also vote on the quality of other students' translations, which helps you learn by seeing how others translated the same sentence. And because you create valuable translations while you learn, we return the favor by offering Duolingo completely free of charge. No ads, no hidden fees, no subscriptions, just free. To put the potential benefit of Duolingo into perspective, think about this. If 1 million people would use Duolingo to learn, the entirety of English Wikipedia could be translated to Spanish in just 80 hours. Duolingo. Learn a language while translating the web.
Okay, so that's the basic idea of Duolingo. Now, when we started working on it, in fact, we started working on it about 3 years ago. We didn't really know it was going to work. It was, who knows. But it turns out that it really does work. So first of all, people really do learn a language pretty well with it. And second, the translations that we get are really good. And I'm going to talk about both of these things. Okay, so first of all, we actually, this graph is old. We actually launched, so we started Duolingo maybe around the beginning of this year. But it was on private beta, so you could only use it through an invitation. And then we actually launched in June. And ever since then, we now have maybe 350,000 active users, not just signups. These are active users who use it once a week. So that's kind of what we have. People are, and it's growing. And the other good thing is, ever since we launched, PC Magazine gave us the same rating as Rosetta Stone. But of course, we're 100% free, whereas Rosetta Stone is $500. Now, the most amazing thing to me about this is that PC Magazine still exists, which when I found that out, that was the most amazing thing. And of course, people really like it. I mean, this person said in the past 2 days they've learned more from Rosetta Stone than over a month of use. Or this person, who is like my mom. And of course, there's also pretty freaky people. So this person, who gets even a little freakier. And freakier. And super freaky. Okay, so people really like it, and people really do learn a language pretty well. And in fact, one of the reasons they like it is because when they're learning, they're actually learning, or part of the learning is with real-world content. So as opposed to just these sentences that are like, the girl runs or the girl runs fast, which we do have in Duolingo to teach you some of the words, we also have real-world content. And it's actually quite satisfying to be able to learn with real-world content. Okay, so people like that.
Is it updated, like, from today, any content, or is it old New York Times articles?
No, it's updated. It's updated. Some of it is older, some of it is newer. But I mean, there's new stuff, for sure. Okay, so people like it, and people learn a language. That's good. But the most surprising thing for me is that the translations that we get are actually really accurate. And in fact, they're about as accurate as those from professional translators. We've done a study, and the accuracy it's a wash between professional translators and Duolingo. It really is. They both make mistakes. At first, I was a little worried because Duolingo does make mistakes, but then I saw that professional translators make the same number of mistakes, so that's good.
More convincing evidence that people actually learn a language?
We're working on that. So the one thing we do is, so we actually just finished a pilot where, I was telling Adam about this before. We finished a pilot where, here's the comparison. It turns out that if you use Rosetta Stone for 55 hours, that's equivalent to 1 semester of college Spanish. That's the study that Rosetta Stone ran, and that's it. That's their evidence that you can learn a language with Rosetta Stone. When we ran our pilot, we're running a much larger study, but this pilot was it's actually with about 15 people. It turns out that with Duolingo, it's 25 hours for the first call. That's equivalent to 1 semester college of Spanish. So you can do.
That they can then pass the.
The way you do this test is you do a pre and a post test. You test them with something, and then 25 hours pass of them using Duolingo, and you test them with, I guess it's a randomized test, of course, and then you see the score, and then that increase is the same as the increase that you get in 1 semester college of Spanish on average. Yes?
So when you say learn a language, you
yes.
mean
don't mean speak and...
No, I mean everything. But the thing is, the way I've been talking about Duolingo is just the translation. And so translation only helps you to read and write. Yes, I agree. But in Duolingo, we want to actually teach you the whole language. So we have other parts that help you to, you get to speak to it and it tells you whether you said it right or not. And then you get to listen to some parts. But in all of those things, we're not getting useful translations. That's just things to get you to help learn a language. Yes?
How is Duolingo financed?
What?
How is it financed?
Oh, how is it financed? Through venture capital money. It is a startup. That it was actually at first financed through an NSF grant, and then we turned it into a startup, and now it is venture capital. That's how it's financed. Yes?
I lived in Barcelona for 3 months
Yep.
last year on a research visit, and I used Google Translate a ton.
Yep.
In order to, whenever I had a question, something I wanted to say, whatever,
Yep.
I'd use that translation. It would help me along. So it made me wonder if there was some way. So anyhow, having it be available in context when I need it really helped me learn super faster. I was wondering if there's some way that Duolingo could somehow be contextualized with your current needs, or is that just not going to
Yeah, that may happen in the future. It currently is not. I mean, currently you get to translate stuff that's we need, not you. But it could.
But you could actually say translate stuff he needs using people in Duolingo.
That's right. And not only that, we could also do a thing where it's like a toolbar that whenever you're reading a newspaper, we say, hey, do you want to help translate this? Because you're needing it, and then we give you all the help that we give you with Duolingo. You could do that. Yes?
I might have missed this, but how do you decide what content you want translated? And considering how much the web is constantly changing, it's not a static text.
Yes, that's a good question. It turns out, first of all, so what we've decided, the things we decide to do is all Creative Commons stuff. Turns out it's illegal for me to decide to translate your stuff. I can't. I break copyright. So all I'm doing is Creative Commons stuff. Now, stuff that's copyrighted, we're about to start allowing people to just submit it. So if you submit it, then I can translate it. So that's it. We're going to let people submit their own content. Yes?
And what about things like the New York Times?
They're doing a pilot with us. They're going to submit it. Yeah, but I can't just take it from them. Otherwise, I'd get sued. Turns out.
Google Translate translates everything, doesn't it?
No, only on demand. And it's you translating it. They're just like... What I can't do is take something from the web and show it to our users to get them to translate it, because then I'm using their content to improve my language learning website. Yes?
How much context does a person need to translate correctly?
You do need context. It's not just single sentences. We actually, maybe I should show you. Before, I thought enough questions would happen, so I can show you. So this is what Duolingo looks for a new user. The new user, DSJHDFJH. That's the name of the user. I don't know. Okay, so this is what it looks like when you just sign up. Okay. The first thing that we try to get you is to do a lesson. Now, these lessons, so by the way, with Duolingo, there are two types of... Okay, yeah, it says. So there are two types of things with Duolingo. There's lessons. In there, we're not getting any translation from you guys. We're just trying to teach you some words. Okay? So in here, we taught you the man, taught you the woman. Then get you to translate this. Here, we're not getting anything useful.
La niña.
Where do you get the sound?
La niña.
Oh, we synthesize it. We have a speech synthesizer. The girl, blah, blah, blah.
What is the accent?
It's good.
Niño.
It's good. The accent is good.
For all languages?
It varies. For French, it's sucky.
Is that why Nicole?
That's why Nicole's.
Are you using Duolingo?
So, anyways, there are these. Oh, by the way, that last one was the one where you had to say to it the man, and you had to recognize your accent, etc. So there's the parts where we're teaching you words, and then once we teach you some words, we send you to a real world translation that basically says, hey, you've learned these words. Help us translate something that uses the words that you've learned. And that's where now I'm gonna skip because I don't have time for all of that, but I'm gonna show you kind of how one of the real world translations. This is the old interface, but anyways, I wanted to show you the new interface. But anyways, here's a translation where you have to translate all of this Spanish into English, but we show you the whole context of the document. So the whole document is actually here. So you can see the context, and then if you don't know a word, you can always hover it, and we tell you what that word means, etc. But anyways, there's a lot more to Duolingo.
So here you're telling people which parts are translating and which parts are for the
yeah, for sure. Yeah. We're making it. We made a choice there because we could have done this thing where we're just like, some things are for learning, some things are for translating, and we don't tell you which. But we made a choice, and it turns out the reason we did some experiments on people. Turns out people really find it rewarding first of all, it's pretty hard to convince somebody that they're translating something useful when the sentence is like a man. They'll know that it's not super useful. But it's pretty rewarding when they know it's a real world thing because they're like, oh, I can see how much I've learned. I can now do this thing. So it's a pretty rewarding experience. Yes?
So is that part of why you think that, according to your pilot, Duolingo is twice as fast as Rosetta Stone? Like why is it so fast?
Oh, why is it faster? Oh, I know why it's faster than Rosetta Stone in particular. Rosetta Stone just happens to suck. And here's why. Here's why. It's all multiple choice learning. And if you ever tried to teach somebody anything, just like try to teach somebody math multiple choice, right? It's not going to work out all that great. Whereas here, you have to type all your stuff. So it helps you remember a lot better. That's why. Yes?
So the value of doing this, I mean, the Google thing would be to improve machine translation, not
yes.
to get some one-time translation done. I mean, do you have a machine learning? Are you personally a believer in machine learning?
Oh, massively, yes. And we have people working on machine translation at Duolingo with all the translations that we're getting to try to make it better.
So is that perhaps more valuable than getting some corpus of things translated?
Sure, if we are going to get there with machine translation, but that's going to take a while, even with our corpus. Hard to know. I personally think it's 20 to 30 years. Is what I personally think, but I could be wrong. Right? It's hard to know. Yeah. Yes.
I wonder if you're generating the lessons that
yes.
starting from the text.
Yes, all the lessons. By the way, that's one other thing with Duolingo, which is different from, say, Rosetta Stone. Rosetta Stone, all the lessons are essentially handmade. With Duolingo, everything is 100% computer generated. So all that stuff. I mean, we do have a general plan that we want to follow. We want you to follow. But then pretty quickly we start realizing what words you know better and what words you don't know, and then we generate it with a program, sentences that are supposed to help you more with the words you don't know. So we do that.
It's adaptive.
It's adaptive. Yes, sure. All the lessons are fully adaptive, so it's generated. Yes.
To add to the context question, it seems like you would want the translation of a document to be internally consistent, right? So if there's one word that can be translated in several ways, you want everyone to use the same translation. Mm-hmm. So where in the interface does that get implemented?
Oh, because you can see the previous, I did not show you the latest translation interface. We're changing it all the time. But you can see the previous translations. So you can see, this actually happens to be really important when you're translating into Spanish, because in Spanish there are multiple, in Spanish there are 3 ways to say you. And you have to be internally consistent in the whole document. And switching is really awful.
Right. Well, I mean, that one I figure you could figure out with the interface you showed us, where you just see the original text and you figure out which one's meant, right?
Oh, you need to see, if you're translating into Spanish, you have to see what the translators chose to do, what the first guy chose to do, and then you have to...
In some context.
Yeah, but we do that. Okay, so the learning's good. Go ahead.
So you are choosing this example to translate. That was Spanish to translate it into English.
Yes.
So this is text that was originally written in Spanish?
Yes.
Because it was terrible. What you had there is full of mistakes. How do you deal with that?
Oh, that was text in Spanish and it was full of mistakes? Oh, I didn't see it.
It was fully written.
Yeah, if there are mistakes, there are mistakes in that's mistakes in the original. What can I do? There are mistakes in the original. And that probably confuses people. Okay. Well, what can you do, right? There are mistakes in the original.
I wonder if you can check it, like, will people recognize this as a mistake and try to...
Yeah, that's what ends up happening. People do recognize it as a mistake a lot of times, but sometimes they don't, right? And sometimes there's factually wrong stuff that we're translating, but I mean, that's not our goal to fix it, right? I mean, sometimes there's just stuff that is just factually wrong, but what can you do, right? We're just supposed to translate. Okay, so the translation is actually quite accurate. So this is just one example of one sentence. The top is a Duolingo translation. The bottom is a professional translator that we paid 20 cents a word, and it's really accurate. And we've done studies with it's thousands, not tens of thousands, but thousands of sentences, where we compare the translations of a professional translator and Duolingo, and we get professionals to rate it from 1 through 5. And the Duolingo average is about 4.81, and a professional translator is 4.83. And Google Translate was 3.12. So it's way better. Yes?
Redundancy? I mean, is that with 100 people doing it?
No, that is not with 100 people doing it. That's a very good question. The redundancy really matters. And of course, this is how we get to accuracy. We don't just get one person to translate it, we get multiple people to translate it, and then we pick the best one. And the number of people, that's varying all the time. I think right now we're at around 6. 6 people do a single sentence, and then we get the votes. But we can do better than that. We know we can do better than that. But that's about the number we're at now.
How do you know which one's the best?
Oh, they vote it. They themselves vote.
Not
Okay.
the same people. New people. New people, or the same people.
The same people. Those 6 people, they vote too.
Oh.
Yep. That's what you get. Yes.
So how do you deal with the fact if there are cultural references throughout the text and people might know the language, but they might not know the factual stuff that's behind the sentences that you're citing?
I don't know what you mean.
Like cultural references, so for instance, like in the US, you would know what it means when somebody says maybe like red state and blue state, and
Yeah.
somebody who's
Yeah.
Spanish doesn't really know what that means. So how
That does happen. That does happen, and we probably make a mistake in many of these cases. But it turns out that at the end of the day, when you make the comparison, all I can tell you there is we've done the comparison, and we're as good as professional translators in terms of the rating of 1 to 5. We probably make a mistake, but professional translators make a mistake too. And in fact, the types of mistakes we make are different from the types of translations professional translators make. We probably make a lot of mistakes similar to what you say, where it's just stuff that is culturally weird or something like that. Professional translators just make careless mistakes because there's just one of them doing the thing, and they'll just make a mistake. Whereas for us, that type of mistake gets corrected because of multiple people. Yes?
Do you plan eventually, you could take advantage of the fact that you have so many people to find, like, if you're translating a math post, you could find somebody who
Yes,
knows
yes.
that.
We've thought about that quite significantly. And not only that, the other thing is we've done a lot of studies about what types of text we can translate with the people. So right now, we're not doing a distinction about whether you're a lawyer or whether we don't do that. We just let people translate. And the types of text that we can translate, by the way, everything pretty well. In fact, scientific stuff is actually quite easy to translate, weirdly. Now, by the way, we haven't tried math, but we've tried documents from the magazine Science, and it actually happens to be quite easy to translate. Part of the reason is because usually scientific words translate to the same thing. And the sentence structure is pretty simple. What we can't translate is legal stuff. Can't do it. It's because even in your native language, you don't understand legal stuff. And poetry. Can't do poetry. It doesn't work. The rest works pretty well. Yes?
So if by, say, 6 people you get to the level of professional translators,
yes.
Is there a sense which if you use 12 people, you would be better than them, or
yes.
Are you stuck at some point?
No, well, you never get to 100%. Because you're going to make some mistakes that are just, the majority of the people believe something wrong, and you're just going to get that. But you can get a little better than professional translators, but it's actually not at 12. It's like, that number you need about 20 or 25, and we don't want to do that. That's so much of a loss of of efficiency, that we don't want to do that.
Will it be better than 3 translators, or is it like
it's better than 1 translator.
Yes.
2 translators is hard because they're almost close to perfect. Once you get 2 people who are professionals translating, they're almost close to perfect. That's kind of hard to beat. I don't know if we can beat them there. I don't know.
There is some kind of level that, like some level that the professionals can get, and that you might be stuck below.
Probably, but it's not a level that is anywhere used. I mean, unless it's maybe some sort of like, the whatever, Declaration of Independence or some really important document, that probably gets translated really well. But for a majority of needs, it's usually 1 professional translator doing the thing because it's already way expensive. Getting to it is super expensive. Yes?
So if I had a document and I wanted to purchase translating services for
yep.
me, would it be cheaper than hiring a translator?
Sure. For us, it's free. I mean, well, it depends on how much we try to. It entirely depends on how much I want to charge you, but I get it for free.
Well, you do provide them with all the servers.
Oh yeah. That doesn't
really
scale with it. It's a fixed cost almost. That doesn't quite scale with the number of translations, so that's not a problem. Yes.
So I actually have a web form that I got from a research project in Italian.
Mm-hmm.
So it's got several hundred 1 or 2 paragraph posts. If I gave it to Duolingo, when can I expect a translation back?
It entirely depends on how many users we get to see it. It depends on our algorithm, how many users we route it to. And that's one of the things I wanted to talk about right now. So actually, it sounds pretty easy to get really high accuracy, which is just give it to 6 people, they'll vote. It turns out it's much harder than that. And one of the things, so for example, if we wanted to get this text on the left translated by these bunch of people, the first thing that we have to do is we actually split up the text into different sentences, and then we also measure the difficulty of each sentence for translation. It turns out that measuring the translation difficulty of a sentence was much harder than we thought it would be. There's all these scores for difficulty of sentences, but they don't apply to us because usually these scores for difficulty of sentences, if I ask you, for example, the word zooplankton, is that a hard word or an easy word? most people would say it's a hard word, and all these scores of difficulty say that's a hard word. Actually, for translation, that's a really easy word because it translates to zooplankton in most cases. So that's actually an easy word. The hard words are words like up, or there are these words that are super loaded. Those are hard words. But anyways, we have to measure the difficulty of the things. And then on the side of the users, we have to keep track of how good each user is. So everything that you do in Duolingo, we record it. And then we figure out from that how good you are at the language. And we figure out what concepts you know. This guy knows how to pluralize. This guy knows verbs in the present tense, etc. So we keep all of that. And then we match the hard stuff with the experts and the easy stuff with the beginners.
Can you get your
yes?
grade sheet for what you know how to do and what you don't know how to do?
Hmm?
Can you get your grade sheet?
Yeah, so I'll talk about that a little bit. Yes, yes?
Do you also measure which user is improving their language?
Yes, we measure according to our own model how much, for example, this guy did not know how to pluralize before, now they know how to pluralize. We do have that. We do measure that. We definitely do.
Concepts like pluralize, etc., language specific, or is there like...
No, unfortunately they are language specific, and that's unfortunate because that requires more work for us, because that means I have to do a specific concepts for Spanish and specific concepts for Italian, etc. Maybe we could do it language not specific, but we don't know how to do that. So for us, everything is language specific, and that is very unfortunate. Yes?
You have a measure of the complexity of the sentences, syntactic complexity.
Oh yeah, we measure that. We have a measure for a lot of these things. And it turns out that measuring the difficulty of a sentence is also language specific. So our measure for Spanish is different than our measure for English is different. And I don't know, at the end of the day, it's a statistically trained model. So I don't know exactly what all the features are, but I can tell you some of the features that are human understandable. So length is an important feature. But actually for Spanish, there's an important feature, which is turns out that the fraction of words that are pronouns in the sentence is a big deal. A bigger deal in Spanish than it is in English, for example. And there are these very specific pronouns in Spanish called the clitic pronouns. And if a single clitic pronoun exists in a sentence, that sentence is like difficulty 10. As soon as that exists there, it's really hard. Anyways, these are statistically trained models, but they're different per language. Yes?
Do you actually focus on people translating into their native
yes.
tongue?
In Duolingo, in the lessons, you translate into a language you're learning, but in the made-up synthetic lessons. But when it's real-world stuff, we get you to translate into your native language because we want the text to look really clean. There, it may be wrong, but it sounds good.
In terms of learning,
the other way is better.
People are learning to understand, they're
yes.
not learning to
In terms of learning, that aspect is better for reading than for writing. Yes. But it turns out that for the translations, doing it the other way around is really crappy. I mean, the output that you get may be somewhat correct, but it's completely unnatural. So we don't do that. Okay, so we have to do all of these things. Another thing that we have to do, which I don't think I showed you, but basically, if you're imagine you're learning English and you're told to translate this stuff, and if you don't know any of the words, you can always click on a word and we tell you exactly what that word means. So that's something else that we've had to develop a lot because each word has multiple meanings, and so it's kind of hard. Okay, now let me show you, I'm going to show you this thing, but before I let me preface this. What I'm going to show you now this is called cohort analysis. And let me first explain the graph and then I'll tell you something. Okay, so this is a graph that shows how much people stick with Duolingo. And I'm going to show you increasing, better graphs. So what this is a graph of all the people who signed up in the first week of March to Duolingo. Okay? That was 100%. That number 1, that is the number of people that came back in the 1 week period, 1 week after they signed up. So if they came back at any time and did a lesson in days between 7 and 14, they're counted here. And if they did not come back, they're not counted. So that means that in the 1 week, in day 7 to 14, at least, well, not exactly, something like 27% of them came back and did a lesson. Week 2, that's days 14 to 21, 7 to 14 is 1 week after 2 weeks, so 14 to 21, something of like 19% came back and did a lesson, etc. And it stabilizes a little under 15%.
Are they the same 15%? Or
No, they're not the same 15%. They're any 15%, but they're mostly the same. They're mostly the same. But anyways, it stabilizes at around 15%. Now let me preface something.
From the 100% of the original.
That's right. When they 100% signed up, 15% become essentially, these are called weekly active users. Okay, let me preface this by saying, when I give this to, it's funny, when I give this to startup people, everybody's like, wow, that's really good. When I give this to academic people, they're like, wow, only 15%? This is actually considered a very good number. So the number, this graph, this is the cohort analysis for Twitter, looks very similar, but it stabilizes around 20%. Okay, so this is the retention for people who signed up the first week of March. Here's the retention so our goal when we're doing Duolingo is to make this curve go up, the whole thing. That's kind of the goal. So here's the same curve, but for the people who signed up in the first week of April, it went up. Basically, it stabilizes a little higher. And here's for the first week of May, which stabilizes at around 20%. And by now, we've grown a little, but of course, there's diminishing returns. We're now at about 22% of what it stabilizes. And the way we're improving this, by the way, is just by doing a bunch of tests to see what increases retention or not. Okay, so when you sign up to Duolingo, we're running a bunch of experiments on you, and then we are comparing you to a bunch of other people who have different experiments, and then we see which ones stay longer, and then we choose those. Yes?
One of the factors here, though, is just that, like, you might not want to learn it. I mean,
yes.
I signed up for Duolingo.
But you didn't want to learn. Yes.
And you would have had to done something amazing, because I wanted to see what it was like.
Yep.
I was in Spain for a week.
Yep.
You would have had to show me, I don't know what, to keep doing that site.
I know what. Yes, this is true, but this is true of this is an inherent problem with Duolingo, right?
I mean, you try showing them random stuff they may be interested in.
I mean, we try all kinds of things.
Well, you're all laughing.
No, but this is you're right. This is an inherent problem with Duolingo. But see, in some sense, we don't care about that, right? What we do is we want to increase that, and we do experiments to try to increase that. What you're saying is there's an inherent limit. We probably can't go higher than a certain amount.
Well, you may not. I mean, it depends on the task. Like if somebody wants to learn a language, there's a certain fraction of people who just, dieting, I assume, would also have a very bad curve.
Yep.
But other things.
Actually, I've looked at. There's a funny example of these curves for the gym. They're not good. It matters. So actually, this is why it's in some sense pretty impressive that for learning a language, which is something that requires quite a bit of effort, still 20% are staying. So that's a good thing. Yes.
What have been the most effective ways of bringing those curves up?
Yeah. So let me talk about some of the ways in which we've done that. Okay. So in all cases, the way we've done that is by running A/B tests. So the idea is when you sign up, we put you in a condition where we're trying something new. And then we compare you with control, which are the people who don't have that condition. And then if you do better, well, your group of people does better than these people, then we make the switch for the whole website. That's kind of what we're doing. And let me show you some of the things that we've tried that actually have increased a lot. Probably the one that increased, in fact, the one that's due the second increase. The majority of that second increase comes from this. Turns out, so in Duolingo, we have an internal model of what you know, which words you know and what concepts you know. We have an internal model. At first, we were not showing that. At some point, we started showing it. We just say, oh, for this word, for the word que, we think you know it at 100%. We think you really know that word, and the last time you saw it is something. For this word, to drink, we think you don't know it so well. And we show you the whole thing. We just open it up. We show you the whole thing. It turns out that gets people to come back a lot more often because they now can see sort of how these bars are increasing. So it gets people to come back more often. Yes?
Do you give people badges?
Yeah, we have badges. We have all kinds of things. And we've done all kinds of A/B tests to see how often we should give badges, et cetera, to get them to come back more often. We've definitely done that. Okay, so that was one of the things that improved quite a bit. Here's another one that improved quite a bit, which was this. It used to be the case that when you were doing a lesson, we would tell you just right or wrong if you got something. Now we started telling you why you got it wrong. So for example, in this case, we may tell you you have a typo, or in this case, this is much better. We told you this word, in the accusative case, you use einen for masculine nouns like apfel. So we started telling you really descriptive stuff about what you got wrong. That made it so that people would come back more often as well. Yes?
How do you do that?
We only do that for the lesson things, which are the things for which we know the answer. We do not do that for the real world stuff because we cannot determine exactly what you got wrong. But for these things, we pretty much can figure that out. By the way, this was actually, it was still pretty hard, even though we knew what the right answer was. We still pretty hard to figure out what right thing to tell you, but we do. And we don't do it in all cases. I mean, sometimes you just enter such crap that we just say, sorry, you're wrong. Yes?
You could, in principle, have the human users do that for the new translation text?
Yes, we could. We could in principle, but we don't currently do that. But we could.
Commercial one?
What?
I forget commercial one? Does it do that?
The Rosetta Stone?
Yeah.
No. Again, it's all mostly multiple choice.
How much curation do you need to do for the lessons?
Well, I'll tell you. What exercise you get is chosen entirely by the computer. Now, the exercises themselves, as in the sentences, those are handwritten. The entirety, and what we need to do by a human. So we handwrite the sentence and also all its possible translations. That's it. So we have, for each language, we have about 15,000 handwritten sentences. And that's what teaching a language means. Yes?
If you try to choose the level of exercises to maximize retention,
yes,
or if you try to choose it to maximize learning,
yes, they're not the same. No, and that's really funny. I know exactly. So to maximize learning, but of course there's a funny thing. Really, what you care is not quite either retention or learning. It's some sort of combination of the two, right? Because if they're learning super well but nobody's staying, that's not as useful as if they may be learning 1% but they're all staying, right? At least they're learning 1%. So what you care is really some sort of combination of the two. We've done this. It turns out that if we want you to maximize learning, we know this. You should get many more exercises in which you're translating into a language you're learning in the lessons. But that also turns people off because they're way harder, and people come back less. So it's not the same, unfortunately. It would be awesome if it was, but it's not.
What if you have them translate like jokes? Does that work better?
We haven't tried that. We haven't tried that. I don't know. That's one of the many things we haven't tried. There's hundreds of things in our.
As difficult as poetry.
Yeah, so we haven't tried that. Any other questions? Well, yes.
I was wondering, roughly how many people are involved in working
on Duolingo right now? 18.
18. Oh,
18 people.
It's not so much.
Yes. Yeah, it's not hundreds.
How many of them are linguists?
And how many languages?
How many of them are linguists?
How many of them are linguists? Depends on how you define linguist. No. There's only one person who has a linguistics degree, but there are two others that I would consider linguists in some sense. I mean, they've kind of been practicing for a while, so about 3. Yes?
How many different languages do you guys do currently?
From English, you can learn Spanish, German, French, and that's it. From Spanish, you can learn English, and from Portuguese, you can learn English. That's what we currently have. We're going to have Italian and Chinese by the end of the year. Chinese is really hard. Arabic is coming next, but we haven't even started working on it. Yes? Oh, yeah. Yeah. We have the whole idea. Yeah, you can do it. We've tried it. We've done the pilot tests where you can actually transcribe or translate video, both. So either subtitle or just transcribe. You can do it. We just haven't done it. And that's actually a really nice thing because that would get you to understand listening. It's really good. We just haven't gotten a chance to do it. There's one extra thing which is different from translation. From translation, from day one, I can get you to be useful in translation. From day one. Video, it really requires a while for you to. If you're really a complete beginner, you can't even separate the words. Turns out, we tell you just how many words. Listen to that video. How many words were said? It can't. I don't know. It turns out, yes.
So in terms of scaling, it seems like there's still this startup cost of if you want to translate English to Japanese, then you have to find someone who knows both of them to do the lesson still.
Yes, that sucks.
So are you thinking about it?
I am thinking about that, but I don't have a great solution. I mean, eventually what we want to do, we get, I would say about 50 emails a day of people who say, I know Swedish and I would be happy to help you do Swedish. It's not just Swedish, any language, right? It turns out the most common one we get, by the way, is Esperanto, which makes no sense to me. I think 100% of the Esperanto speakers have emailed us by now because we get a shitload of them. I just don't understand. But anyways, there's a lot of people who claim they want to help us. So we believe that what we want to eventually do is maybe get a language started and then just say, hey guys, help us. And then maybe that'll, but yeah. It's a whole thing. We want to do that, but we haven't started doing it. And right now, if we want to do a new language, you can see it two ways. It's either 3 months. Well, it's 3 months. It takes us 3 months to do a new language. Money-wise, it's about $40,000. That's it. Okay. However you want to. If you think by money or time, they're the same. Yes?
For non-Latin languages, you have another issue, which is just the alphabet.
Yep.
Right.
We know that. This is why Chinese, so actually Chinese, we've been working on Chinese longer. I mean, for example, we're about to do Italian. I know exactly when we're going to be done with Italian. It'll take us an exact amount of time, which is about 3 months. Chinese, I don't even know exactly when we'll be done. I'm hoping by the end of this year, but I'm not even sure because there's many other problems.
Even if you're already the person learning Chinese, to learn a lot.
Yes, but
basic stuff before they can translate.
Oh, but we need to add that into our learning modules. We need to add how to teach you characters, for example, which is just by itself this huge problem. So yeah, it's I don't know if it'll even work, but we'll try it. Yes.
Eventually, you see that the entire web will just be translated to all languages, or just everybody in the world will speak all languages?
That's a good question. I don't know. I think it's not the case that everybody will always, for example, they speak English or whatever. I don't think so. But okay, so these are two things that we tried. Let me tell you one that we tried that didn't work because it's pretty funny because we got this. It's still to this day maybe now the second most common feedback that we get from the users. By the way, we've gotten a total of about 280,000 emails from our users with shit that they have to say. Either I love this thing or here is some way to improve it or something. I would say the second most common thing that we get is please allow me. So in Duolingo, we force you to do the listening exercises. We force you. You have to listen to some of this stuff. And the feedback is, I do Duolingo at work. I can't listen to stuff, so can you let me turn that off? So I don't want to do the listening parts. I don't want to do it. And we thought, oh man, there's all these people doing Duolingo at work. Let's allow them. So we added this thing at the top that you could turn off your audio and not do any listening exercises. We thought that was going to majorly increase retention. It was going to be awesome. Turns out that when we put it in, it decreased retention. And the reason for that is because without the audio thing, Duolingo becomes much more monotonous. Now we've taken a whole type of exercise that we don't give you, and now it's more monotonous, so people use it less. So this is something that people want, but actually hurts. So we now don't do that. We don't allow you to turn it off.
But after you go through the first, lowest level, you
Yep.
still have
Yes, at all times. We get you to listen at all times. For every word, you gotta, it gets more and more complex. So we get you. So I guess what I'm trying to say here is there's many things that people think they want, but in reality, it's not so good. Actually, another really common thing is, please let me translate more stuff into the language that I'm learning. People really want that, but whenever we increase that, retention goes down. So we don't do it.
That was the most common thing you get? What's the most common request?
Oh, no. The most common request is, please don't use Flash, which is just really dumb. People want to use Silverlight. No, I'm just kidding. No. That would be funny. Yes?
Is it the same people?
Hmm?
Is it the same people?
What? No, I don't know. I actually don't know. I don't know that. Yes?
When you say that it decreases retention, do you care so much about retention as you care about people, the same people contributing more? Like if you lose one person who was going to use the system once every other day,
yes,
and you keep one person that is using the system 10 hours a day.
Yes, so you're talking about time spent versus total time spent versus retention. Yeah, we actually care, in reality what we care the most about is total time spent. But we've done many studies and it turns out they're really correlated, very highly correlated. It's almost the same. So it's easier for us to think about retention, so we think about that. But they're very highly correlated. It just turns out, that's just it. It averages it out.
You have super users who do 50% of.
Oh, we have crazy users that. So for example, we have. So I would say about 5% of the people who use Duolingo completely finish the whole. If you look at it, I don't know if I can show you because I don't have that user. But the way Duolingo is structured is there's a learning tree. They finish the whole tree. That takes, by my estimates, it takes about 400 hours. And we have a bunch of them that just do the whole thing. So yes?
The business model that, when you did your NSF funding, they probably had slightly different goals. Some people, you might go to foundations and get your 15 people funded
to
make the world a better place.
Yep.
Retention might be a goal. Your goal might be different than getting some corpus translated.
Wait a second. So what would the goal be?
Translate Wikipedia.
Translate. Oh, we're doing that. Yeah. No, I understand. The goal is different.
Getting the people efficiently. I guess that tends to be the same, right? Executing your tree is only useful if it in fact makes me fluent in the language.
Yes.
I guess you could tell me when you talked to NSF, you wrote a report that was perhaps different than talking to the venture capital people.
It was actually pretty similar. The only difference was with the venture capital people, I put a dollar amount on what we were doing. But that's it. Everything was it's very, very similar. We're going to teach people a language. Here's how well we teach people a language. We're going to translate. Here's how well we translate. And here's how much we can translate. there's this one extra thing, and by the way, translating this much equals to this much money.
So NSF wants to make jobs and not make the world a better place now, I guess.
Well, no, I mean, in some sense, translating Wikipedia is a good thing. Yeah. Okay. One last thing that I want to talk about is just the usage by country. So this is the usage by country right now. 28% are in the US. The reason this is super interesting is, at least to me, it turns out people in the US, for us, are pretty crappy customers. Actually, retention in the US is lower than 20. It does not stabilize at 20%. In the US, it stabilizes like 10%.
This percentage, this picture.
Exactly. That's the thing. In the US, learning another language is a complete hobby. It'd be great to learn French, wouldn't it? That's about it. Whereas in other countries, especially, for example, developing countries, learning English, this is not just learning another language, it's learning English. You do it to make more money. That's it. And those people, their retention is much higher. It's not 20%. It's like 26, 27%, depending on the country. But it's higher. So in the end, the average is about 20%. But for us, a user in Mexico is worth a lot more than a user in the US, just because they'll stick around, they'll do a lot more, and they'll really try to learn the language. Yes?
So then keeping that in mind, what's the ratio between users doing the lessons and doing the translations, right? Because you would think the users who are like, I need to learn English, don't care about doing the translations.
Yeah, that doesn't vary between the countries. That doesn't vary. It turns out that the translations are actually a learning experience, and they're quite rewarding, so people do them. It doesn't vary. And the ratio is about, I would say, for every 3 lessons that get done, 1 translation gets done. More time is spent on the lessons. What's 1 translation? 1 sentence per 3 lessons. So
3 lessons. Lessons is like...
A lesson takes 4 minutes. Translating 1 sentence by 1 person takes approximately 1 minute. So you see the time. It's like about 10% of the time is spent doing translation, useful stuff, and about the other 90% is spent doing not useful to us, but useful to the people. And we're okay with that. Yes?
You said you don't have Dutch yet, so the Dutch people using your site, are they?
They're using it to learn Spanish. Most Dutch people know English. So they're pretending they're native English speakers, but that's okay. We don't care. They're pretending to be native English speakers to learn, say, Spanish or whatever. It's the same for the Germans here. That's exactly what they're doing. Yes?
How big a server farm do you need to support your scads of users?
We use Amazon Web Services. I don't know how many servers. It's 40? I don't know. Some number like that. I don't know the exact number. But yeah. Any other questions?
The gray area is pretty big.
Yeah, it's like weird countries. I mean, there's a bunch of a lot of this is Latin America, and because for example, we don't have much in Asia, but it's because we don't have any Asian languages. I mean, you can't learn from Asian languages, so a lot of this is Latin America. But it's just they're all smaller.
Why don't you have Brazil or some Portuguese?
Because we just started with learning English from Portuguese. We started about 2 weeks ago, and actually, by now, it's probably about 2%. And this graph was done about a month ago. So at that time, it was close to 0. Yes?
What's going to happen if people do stay? What happens after they finish the course of learning?
They can continue doing translations. Once you've done with our preset lessons, we just say, hey, you want to continue practicing? Do more translations.
Do people actually do that?
Yeah, they do. They do. They stick around. And it's because they just continue practicing their stuff. And actually, here's another really weird thing. 50% of the people who sign up to Duolingo are either intermediate or higher in the language that they're learning. I did not expect that. And it's because they're using it. So for them, they forget the lessons. They're just doing the translations, and they're using it to kind of practice. Yes?
I mean, if this is, I don't know I don't quite understand the plan to monetize it, but you could potentially pay somebody. Let's say you could say, okay, after you're done with all the lessons and now you're really good and you're translating, you could actually pay them to use your system.
We could.
Would you?
I don't know if we'll do that, but we could 100% say, and that's kind of an incentive to finish. Yeah. It's like, as soon as you finish, we start paying you. Or we could, by the time you finish, we could just give you $10 to finish, right? Just, you finished, here's $10. We do that.
So like Coursera seems to, these signed certificates by the professor seem to be worth something. Do you also?
Yeah, it's going to be a signed certificate by me.
Give them
I really know how to teach you French. No, I don't know. I'm just kidding. I don't know if we're going to do that.
You actually have a fairly objective credential for, maybe in India it would carry some financial gain.
Thank you.
As long as you don't sign it.
Yeah, I don't know if we're going to do that. But yeah, I mean, it's, well, we may not do side certificates, but actually what we really want to do is we want to make it so that the Duolingo level starts meaning something. So instead of saying well, for English, there's something you can say, which is your TOEFL score. But for most languages, there's not much you can say, or at least not super. There's actually a European system for many languages. But there's not much you can say like the TOEFL score that's super kind of well recognized. But what would be awesome is if you could just say, oh, I'm a Duolingo level 8 for Spanish. That would be awesome, but I mean, that'll require a lot of effort to get there. Yes?
So if you're introducing a new language, what are the cost components? I mean, say Chinese, so manage to learn Chinese to English. Would it make it easier for you to use Chinese to Spanish?
Yes. Once you've done a language, if you've done 2 to English, doing the kind of that is cheaper and less time. It's about half. So, but we haven't done that ever. All we've done so far is centered in English. But we know exactly what would be required, and it's about half the work. So we're gonna do actually French from Spanish relatively soon. That's the other. Yes.
What sort of feedback do you get when you're translating a sentence?
You get 2 types of feedback. One immediate feedback, which is kind of a diff between what you just did and the best translation so far. That's an immediate feedback, and then afterwards you get votes from other users, but those come delayed. So the,
if there are only, if there are only 6 translators, then the first one will not get a
the first one gets a diff with Google Translate. That's what they get. But okay, that's all I had in case, if you guys have more questions, that's kind of all I had. Yes?
Where are you putting all these translations? Are they available to?
Yes, they are. So it depends on each thing. So for things like Wikipedia, we haven't put them back, but we're going to start putting them back. And for things that are not Wikipedia, either we're going to give them back. So for example, for things like the New York Times, we're going to give them back, and the New York Times will deal with it, or we'll host them and we'll put them out. Right now, we have not yet exposed that.
So you're collecting parallel Wikipedia in Spanish?
Yeah, we have a pretty large Wikipedia in Spanish now.
How does it compare to the actual Wikipedia?
Well, it's still smaller, but it's different. I mean, it's a different thing. Yes?
How are you measuring how many people are learning the language?
Oh, no, I sort of did, but not much. Here's how you measure how well people learn a language. This is pretty established in the language learning community. You do pre and post test. So what happens is somebody shows up, you test them with a sort of standardized test. It turns out for Spanish, there's one. For English, you would use the TOEFL. For Spanish, there's another one. They come in, you test them. Okay, score X. Then they use the site for a while, then you test them again. These tests are randomized. And then that increase, that's how well they learn it. And there's fairly well accepted amounts of increase in these tests for what corresponds to college level courses in that language. That's kind of how you measure it. And that's what we're doing. Yes?
How are you going to put Wikipedia as Spanish back?
Oh, we're going to go put it back. But however, we've spent a lot of effort talking to them. Turns out Google had a project to translate Wikipedia with Google Translate. They were just going to go put it back. Well, they just started putting it back, and they really pissed off the Wikipedian community of each language, and then they got blocked. It's basically what happened. So we learned from that. I knew that because that was being done at my time at Google when I spent some time at Google, and that was being done at the time, and that was kind of, so I learned that lesson. So what we're doing is we're talking to each community has kind of their bosses. So there's the Wikipedia in Spanish, which is the one we're going to start with, and we're talking to them. And then they have told us which articles they would like translated. It turns out they don't want all articles translated. For example, they don't want politics articles translated. They just don't want that. And it's because they want to have their own view. They feel like otherwise it would be an American view of their politics articles, rightly so. But they would very much like science articles translated, because presumably those are more impartial. So they've told us what kinds of articles they would like translated. These are the ones we're doing, and then we're going to put them back. But we're going to put them back, and it's going to say sort of this is a translation from English, and it'll say it's a translation from English. Yeah. Yes.
What is the rate of translation based on current user activity? Because you said Google is translating this million of books using.
Oh, yeah, I don't know that number, partly because we're not trying to maximize rate. Right now we're really redoing a bunch of things because we're trying to improve a lot of things. So I don't know that number, but I would say let me see, off the top of my head, probably in the low hundreds of thousands of sentences a day is about right. It's kind of, if I'm wrong, sorry, that's about right. Yeah. Yes, done? Done. Thank you.